Hello, my name is Wesley Wallace, and I'm a student news journalist for Radford University's Tartan newspaper. Today, I'll be speaking with Dr. Ishmael Betancourt. He is the Chief Global Officer and the Assistant Provost for Global Education and Engagement at Radford University. How are you today?
Good, how are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing good, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with the Tartan. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, yeah, anytime.
So now that we're already in the spring 2021 semester, how has the first week gone for you, and how have you been acclimated to the university?
In terms of the first week of classes here, actually, we have been doing pretty well. I know some students have had some issues with visas in terms of coming into the country. There's actually 2 of them that have not arrived yet. They're scheduled to arrive before the ad drop deadline. If they can't actually, unfortunately, make it to that, then they'll have to defer actually for fall, unfortunately. But the week is going pretty well, you know. I mean, it's just the COVID things and all the, things that we have to do in preparation, make sure that everybody's safe. So we're doing pretty well, actually. And for me, yeah, I came in actually in February 25th last year was my first day. And shortly after that, I went to work from home. So been used to the COVID thing since day one here at Radford. And it's been going very well. People have been very supportive, actually, so.
That's great. And one of the things that was interesting about this interview is the fact that we get to talk about global education because it affects not just domestic students, but international students.
That's
and
correct.
For the first question I wanted to ask you, the Student Experience in Research University Consortium, which is an academic and policy research collaboration at UC Berkeley, surveyed approximately 22,519 international undergraduate students and 7,690 international graduate students about their academic experiences and the institutional support they have received from public research universities during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the survey, both undergraduate and graduate international students reported that they adapted to remote instruction better than domestic students. International students were more satisfied with how their university responded to the pandemic, the courses that they were offered remotely, and with how their instructors supported their remote learning. However, the most pressing concerns experienced by international students included maintaining their health, managing their visa statuses, having adequate financial support, and managing U.S. healthcare insurance and obtaining healthcare services. So I wanted to ask you, as Radford University's Chief Global Officer, how will you uphold the center's mission to serve international students during the pandemic?
That's actually a very good question. And I can tell you a little bit of what happened here at Radford University because I just came in as soon as I was coming in. I can tell you that international students were definitely affected. There were some students actually, when we switched to online, that's something that the immigration authorities actually don't allow. I mean, for an international student to be inside the United States, they have to be full-time on a face-to-face basis. So they actually quickly moved towards actually allowing current international students to be able to do everything online. So that actually was actually a little bit better for them. We did encourage students not to leave the country because, and some of them did, I mean, which is fine, but then you run the risk that actually the coronavirus, I mean, at that moment, that was back in March, April, May, you know, they would go back and maybe the coronavirus situation was actually worse and they would not be able to come into the country. Thankfully, the students that actually went back home were able to come back for the fall and still do the classes. Some of them did a combination of classes here. Some of them did all the classes online. So that's actually worked out pretty well, I would say. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the international students do definitely prefer to have the face-to-face instruction because that's what they're looking for, to get American students, in their classroom, to have American faculty and have the American experience of education. But still, they enjoyed their experience while they were here. I can tell you that. We actually, for those students that needed financial help, there were some grants out there from the U.S. government that we could apply on their behalf, and we did. And I believe about 3 or 4 of them actually got the aid for those that actually requested it. So I think all of them got it, to be honest with you. So far so good in terms of providing them with support, providing them with the class support, with the visa support, the financial support. And when it came to health, we do require, or we encourage, I should say, international students to have health insurance when they come over here. They can buy whatever they want to. We're moving a little bit away from that, and beginning this fall, we are required, we sign with a company in the US that will provide insurance, health insurance for every international student here. And it's not going to be, they're not going to be able to waive out of it. It will be required just for these reasons. I mean, when you live in Europe, the health system is free. So if you break a leg, you can just go to the hospital and you don't get an expense, maybe $10 if that.
Right.
It's not the same. So, and sometimes they have a little bit of a hard time understanding the difference in that. So, so we definitely will be requiring them, and we have already notified them that they will be enrolled automatically on the international health insurance for students at Radford University beginning this fall. So, yeah.
And I also wanted to ask you, prior to coming to Radford, you also worked at Upper Iowa University
That's
in
correct.
Fayette, Iowa. And as a private institution, Upper Iowa has approximately around a student population of around 1,939 undergraduate students and a small town of roughly around 1,374 citizens. So although Upper Iowa is located in a small rural community, you played a significant role in establishing the university's international community of students who came from countries such as Malaysia, Singapore, and even Hong Kong. Additionally, while serving as the Vice President of International Education, you work to provide scholarship packages to transferred students, ranging from $5,000 to $17,000 in financial aid. And you aim to provide employment opportunities to international students, which subsequently boosted the local economy in Fayette, Iowa. So I wanted to ask you, now that you've been appointed as the Assistant Provost for Global Education here at Radford, will you work with the Center for Career and Talent Development and other colleges and departments on campus to provide employment opportunities to both international students and domestic students who study abroad? And will you also work with Allison Pratt, Radford's Director of Financial Aid, to provide international students with generous financial aid packages similar to the ones you provided at Upper Iowa?
Yeah, I think just a couple of corrections there. Actually, Upper Iowa University has about 700 or 800 students on the campus in Fayette, but they have 22 campuses throughout the U.S. And the total population is about 6,800, 7,000 students.
Right.
So, so we have that. And then we have 3 locations abroad in Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Singapore. Singapore ended up closing early when I was there. Actually, there were a lot of issues there when I got there, and the president made the decision to close that, and I supported that actually. But yeah, we actually ended up expanding the number of international students. We were able to actually work with the financial aid office and say, hey, you know what? Tell me how much money we have to work here, and then we'll try to maximize it so that every student gets a little bit, So we were able to redo the packages. That being said, remember that Upper Iowa University, the tuition alone is $32,000 compared to Radford University. So the packages that you would see at Upper Iowa University would be a lot larger, than you would see here at Radford University. Right. So I know at this point our financial aid packages or scholarships, because international students cannot apply for the FAFSA, it's only a merit-based scholarship. They range between $6,000 and $10,000. So it really depends on the GPA. So it's something that once a student is admitted, they are considered for the scholarship, and then they're automatically awarded one once they get admitted. So by the financial aid office. So it goes in proportion. Every school has a calculation that says, we don't want to give more scholarship, or we're going to give a little bit less scholarship. So it's always a game actually of numbers. But I think the packages here are definitely decent. I mean, I think we can definitely take a look and see if there's any way that we can maximize that funding. But I can tell you that the financial office already does that. They try to maximize it as much as we can. So, so we have had conversations about that, and moving forward, we definitely are gonna help them out to see what we can do, to make sure that everybody gets access to financial aid. I mean, merit-based scholarship. When I say financial aid, it also includes other stuff, but they don't qualify for that. So, also, I have met with the career services with Blake. He's a new director also. He just started during the pandemic as well. And absolutely, we are big promoters of helping students get jobs, not only on campus, but off campus too, for internships. So, and I can tell you a lot of the international students that I have spoken with, they hold a job on campus. One thing actually about international students is that the government limits them to work on campus only up to 20 hours. So they cannot work off campus whatsoever, unless they're going to do an internship that is for a class, right? So that is considered quote unquote work, but it's under an internship class. So they're allowed to do that. So we have worked pretty well with Blake. We are on the career services office. We work pretty well with the financial aid office. They've been very responsive. I think that we haven't had someone in my position that has been here long, or not a lot of stability there. So now that we have that, we are able to actually move forward with some of the initiatives that we wanted to do. So So yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, throughout your extensive career in higher education, you've worked on college campuses across the country in states like Missouri, Arizona, Ohio, Iowa, and now Virginia. So I wanted to ask you, besides location, salary, and career opportunity, what other factors play a role in your decision to work at new universities? And would you say your salary negotiating power has increased throughout your career?
Well, actually, one of the reasons I came to Radford University, and actually the reason that I moved from one institution to another one, is potential. And I wasn't necessarily looking to leave Upper Iowa University. As you know, I was there for 7 years or so. I started there as a vice president for international programs. Then I got promoted to international programs and student affairs. Then I got promoted to international programs, student affairs, and administrative services. They call them student services.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it was going very well actually. So, but I decided that what I really wanted to do was actually go back to international, because student affairs and administrative services takes a lot of your time. So, and I've always been dedicated to international students. That's my passion. So when I started looking, this is the only institution that I applied for. I did a lot of research, and I did find out that they have, as part of their strategic plan, they had an international strategic objective as well: increase the number of students, provide more services to international students. And when you have a university that put that in there, and not many do, once you have a university like that, it tells you that international is very important for them. So
Right.
international offices in other schools, sometimes not maybe at Virginia Tech, but other smaller schools, it's not as important. So they always struggle to get funding, and it's horrible. So when I saw that they had that commitment, and I met with Dr. Hemphill, the President Hemphill, and he reassured that, and everybody around here reassured me that, I think that was it's the best decision I've ever made. Actually, I'm very happy here. They have kept their promise, and I'm very thankful and blessed that they're doing that. So they're supporting me. So.
And for my next question, I wanted to ask you, as a native of San Juan, Puerto Rico, you came to the United States in 1994, and you actually attended St. Louis University.
Yes.
During your time at St. Louis University, you graduated with a bachelor's in business administration and with a minor in communications in 1998. During a 2012 interview at Xavier University, you spoke about your initial perception of the American dream by saying, "I thought that the US was a land of opportunity, and I wanted to come to the US. I was the first one in my family to attend college in the United States, and I wanted to experience getting an education, getting a good job, and getting paid fairly, and having the quote unquote house with the white picket fence." So I wanted to ask you, during that 2012 interview, you also said that your perception of the American dream had changed a little bit, and that you realized that the American dream comes with a price. Given the current social and political climate of the United States, how has your perception of the American dream changed in 2021? And does it hold the same amount of value to you than it did when you started out when you were younger?
My God, I mean, that was a long time ago, and I didn't even remember that quote, actually, now that you mentioned it. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody that lives outside the US, their dream is to actually come to the US and have a great life, because that's what you see in the movies, right? You want to come over, have a great house, a great salary, have a great job, have a great family. And once people come to the US, they quickly realize, I mean, it's not as it's portrayed in movies. Actually, it's just really movies. So you got to work hard. You got to educate yourself. You have to know how to work with people, communicate with people, respect people, and so on. So it wasn't as easy as it was, but I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. And that's one of the reasons I stayed here in the US versus going back home to Puerto Rico or moving somewhere else, right? So I really enjoy working in the US. I mean, I think the system is fantastic, and it really provides opportunity to individuals. That being said, I think that if you compare everything to 2021, what I said then to what I say now, it's a completely different dynamic. And
Right.
myself as a Hispanic, as a minority, definitely seen challenges, and I've encountered obstacles in terms of not being promoted, or you can imagine, right? So for that would be considered discrimination. But I personally chose not to focus on that and focus on what I can do. I know there's a lot of my friends that said, "Oh, I'm not being promoted for this and I'm being promoted for that." I said, "Well, you know what? Here's what you need to do. Go to another job, go to your competitor and keep moving up." And that's what I did. I try not to dwell on the on the bad things that had happened in my life, I did reflect on them, and I said, just unfortunately, there's gonna be ignorant people everywhere I go, and
Right.
people that discriminate against minorities everywhere I go. I said, but let me be the bigger person here. I said, it's just that's going to happen everywhere. I mean, even if I go to Spain, if I go to China, it's just there's discrimination everywhere. So it's unfortunate. I mean, it's very unfortunate. But I was lucky enough that there were a lot of people that believed in me and helped me move up and and supported me. So yeah, so it's definitely a different dynamic, as you can imagine. And I do take every time I can to educate individuals around campus, especially in offices, on how to work with international folks, with minorities, and said, here's the reason why they're asking, here's the reason why they're acting like this. So, for example, we have Saudi Arabian students that, when they're back in their country, they are requesting a transcript in their registrar's office, and they're like, I need a transcript, and they're like, yeah, okay, it will be a minute, and they wait there because they know if they leave that office, their transcript will not be sent anywhere. So they have to, basically harass the individual there to get the transcript.
Right.
And when they come to the US, they put a request for a transcript, and they stay there and they harass them. And I had to speak with some, not only with the registrar's office, not here, but at my other school, said this is the reason why they do that. And by knowing that, they have been able to understand why they do that, the international students, especially the Saudi Arabians, and being able to serve them, say, I promise you, we will send a transcript. I will send you an email. You can actually see it online here where it went out, yada, 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 yada. So whenever I can, I try to educate individuals so that it doesn't turn into, those Saudi Arabians are always harasser and kind of like a stereotype or discriminate against those students. So whenever I can educate, I do that. Same with the students. I sit down with them and I tell them, like, hey, I promise you this is going to be here. If not, come see me and I will help you. So far, so good.
And I wanted to ask you, Radford University's Faculty Senate President, Jake R. Fox, and a cross-functional search committee conducted a national search for Radford University to identify candidates for your current position as the Assistant Provost for Global Education and Engagement. Besides your proven track record of success in the field of international education, how would you say you stood out among an array of exceptional candidates? And what was the application process like? And how did you pitch yourself during your campus interview?
That's a hard one, actually, because I don't know who else actually interviewed on campus or for this position. I can tell you that my strategy coming in was to say, here's what I've done, and my experience and my results will speak for themselves. I think that it was, when you go interview for a job, I mean, you can tell right away if you feel comfortable or not. I mean, both parties, the one interviewing and the interviewee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we felt, both when we met in, for the interview. I think that what they wanted to do here at Radford is where I had a lot of experience, and maybe that have helped with the decision of why hiring me. So I've gone to a lot of schools. If you look at the schools that have been, St. Louis University, they had some international office in there, but I gave them more structure. Obviously I talked to my boss. I said, where do we want to head? And then from there, I can structure the office, accordingly. I did the same thing in Arizona. They brought me for that. They brought me at Xavier University in Cincinnati exactly for that. They said, we don't know how to start. We want to build this international office. We don't know what structure to give. So I came over and I did that. Same with Arizona. With Iowa, same thing. Plus, they also had campuses abroad, so that had some more of a complexity to it. Did that as well there, and then here as well. I mean, they wanted me to actually structure the office. And one of the things that have changed since we've been here is that our office, the international office, manages everything international except recruitment. So the recruitment efforts for international students were under undergraduate admissions, and that's something that we have changed, and international recruitment and admissions is now under our office. So we have anything and everything international, and in hopes to move everything forward so that for the benefit of the university, recruiting more students, sending more American students abroad, providing more scholarships. So, because when you have a lot of pieces around, it's just hard to connect with other departments. And if they don't agree, it's just, it's a little bit more difficult. So now that we have everything under one roof, it's going to be a lot easier. So.
And I wanted to ask you, As Radford University's Chief Global Officer, you are responsible for leading a small team of individuals who specialize in administrative assistance, coordinating abroad education, immigration counseling, and ESL, otherwise known as English as a Second Language, tutoring. Staff members within the Center for Global Education are mainly composed of experienced female educational professionals. So I wanted to ask you, as a male leader who has a qualified team of female staff members, how will you promote diversity, inclusion, and gender equality within the Center for Global Education and Engagement? And how would you describe yourself as a leader? Would you consider yourself assertive?
Absolutely. I think that a piece of my background that a lot of people don't know is that when I was young, my dad died, when I was 5 years old. And I grew up with my mom and my sisters. So I grew up surrounded by females. So I grew up respecting females, supporting females, promoting females. And for me, that has been very, very important. So I'm very proud to work in an office that we have females. And I support them in any way, shape, or form that I can. And I don't tolerate anybody discriminating against them or anybody else, to be honest with you, but specifically on myself against them or making jokes about them, anything like that. I mean, I strongly believe that female are obviously the same as men. I mean, I'm not even sure why that hasn't stopped for a long time, but yeah, I mean, we in my office, unfortunately, in international, not in, unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately actually, but in international education, the majority of people that work are females, probably about 75%. So it's very likely that when we hire an individual, probably most of the individuals are actually females.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen a little bit more males coming to the field, and also African Americans and Asians and other minorities in there, which I think is fantastic. So, but also, I think that when we do searches, we I don't know how to say it. Actually, I lost my line of thought, but we want to represent that campus community, that international campus community. You know, international students are coming over to meet with the immigration advisor constantly. So they want someone that they can feel comfortable with. So if you can find someone that has had experience with a male, female, Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, I think that's the best. So we put a lot of emphasis when it comes to these jobs on experience rather than anything else. So, and you know, that's how it should be, I guess.
And I wanted to ask you, while serving as the Executive Director of International Education at Xavier University, you made it your mission to recruit students from non-traditional places. Among the international students who were Chinese, Indian, South Korean, and Saudi Arabian, you recruited students from Zambia, South Africa, and places where students weren't typically given recruitment opportunities. So I wanted to ask you, do you plan on recruiting international students from non-traditional places to Radford University? And how will you achieve this goal during the current COVID-19 pandemic?
Absolutely. I think we've started to see an uptick in applications, which is great. I can tell you that I've been reviewing applications this past week, and we have a lot of applications from Ethiopia. We have applications from Nepal. We have applications from, let me see, from Ghana. We have applications from South Korea. We have applications from Philippines. So we have seen a wide variety of applications from a lot of places, not your typical, because if you look at the statistics, you know, most of the students that come to the US are Chinese and Indian for the most part. So we definitely will welcome that. Any Chinese and Indian students actually will welcome any students, but we also want to try to diversify as much as we can our population of students. And that's easier to say than to do, to be honest with you. So, but yeah, we're definitely putting efforts in there too, and hopefully those pan out. So.
And while working at Radford University, but other than working with students and helping them achieve their own educational goals, how would you say you will stay creatively fulfilled in your position? And what are some top priorities that you want to accomplish for this semester and for future years to come?
Yeah, well, I mean, with the strategic plan, we definitely want to open an ESL program. That's something that Radford University hasn't had in quite a few years. And the importance for that is that if we're going to go recruit students, for example, from Vietnam, where their English is non-existent, basically, you know, so they don't teach in English. So, I mean, they don't know a lot, they don't have a big base on English. Right. Then we need an ESL program to actually be able to teach them English, and then after that transition them to academic. without that program, if they don't know English and they don't have good English, they're not going to be able to be admitted to our school. So that was number one. So it allows us to expand where we can actually recruit. We don't have any problems, you know, whether you speak English or not. We'll just bring you in, teach you English, and then let you go into your MBA or your undergraduate career or whatever, you know, the graduate program. So I focus a lot of my efforts on building relationships, schools abroad that are interested in doing what they call 2+2 partnerships. 2+2 partnerships are just like a community college. In other words, you go 2 years to community college and then you transfer to Radford to finish your last 2 years. So 2 years in China, 2 years at Radford, and then you get a Radford degree, or 2 years in India, or whatever country that we want to do with that. So there's some faculty that have some connections that we have tapped into those connections actually and contacted schools abroad to see if they're interested in doing with that, and they have expressed their interest. I can tell you that probably those type of relationships take about a year or so to build. So hopefully in the next year or two, you will see more students from those countries coming in, including Germany, Japan, South Korea. We have been asked if we're interested in something in Burkina Faso and in Benin, that's in Africa. You know, so it really depends actually. Another one in Germany too. Oh my gosh, where's the other one? There's a couple more. One in India, one in Indonesia as well. So we have quite a few leads actually that we will be following with all of them. So I would say my efforts to begin with will be to increase the international population on campus, while at the same time making sure that when we bring students, we can service them. So it doesn't do us any service to bring students and not be able to provide them with a great experience for that. So.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you're not only bringing students from other places, but you're creating this environment where students can not only learn from each other, but meet new people and learn new things.
That's right. You know, and you know, I call my approach manage growth approach, because if you bring 300 international students here, then you need also some services, potentially have 3 more international student advisors. We may have to rethink what kind of food we have in the cafeteria. Do we open a small section for international food? Do we have tutoring in other languages? I mean, all this stuff. I mean, what about housing? Do we need more housing that it's open 24 hours? 12 months a year versus not only the semesters, because they can't go home as easily as an American can go back to Chicago, right? So, I mean, all these stuff come with the territory. And then as we continue to grow, those are the questions that I'm going to be asking around and say, hey, we're growing, so this is something we need to take into consideration. So.
And throughout your career in higher education, you've also worked to not only expand international programs, but make the program suitable for the future generation of students in higher education. I wanted to ask you, from 2010 to 2012, you actually served as the executive director of international education at Xavier University. On November 3rd, 2010, the Xavier Newswire, which is Xavier University's student newspaper, interviewed you when you first arrived on their campus. During the interview, they asked you how you hope to change or improve Xavier's study abroad program. In your response, you said, there are many changes that I foresee in the near future in the study abroad area. Some of what I want to achieve includes opening more study abroad, service learning, and faculty-led programs, working with the administration to allow student financial aid to be applied toward approved study abroad programs, and getting a full-time director of study abroad and a study abroad advisor, and offer more international related services and activities to students, faculty, and staff. So I wanted to ask you, based on those goals that you previously had at your Xavier University, do you plan on bringing those here at Radford University?
Absolutely, yes. One of the things when I came here with study abroad is that we didn't have somebody full-time on the job right now. So everybody was trying to come over, faculty that wanted to lead groups of students abroad, students that want to go for a semester for a summer program. I mean, parents calling to get more information about that. And we just didn't have anybody on the job that was full-time. It was just a part-time employee. So we have fixed that. We have hired a full-time individual. Her name is Sarah Colson. And she came from within Radford University. She was actually one of the, I think, assistant director of advising for one of the colleges. So I'm like, that's great, because she knows the classes. And when you go to study abroad, you have to, part of the job is to say, okay, well, if you're going to be taking these classes here and there, then we have to make sure that they transfer back and you don't lose, you know, $20,000, go somewhere else, right? And then not have your classes transferred back. The second thing I noticed is that the number of locations that we had offered to students We did have a lot of programs that were very, very expensive, and that's what we were promoting to students. And we switched that. We actually signed an agreement with University Study Abroad Consortium, USAC, and they provide great programs for a fraction of the price. So my goal is accessibility and affordability. So anybody can go. I'm not saying that they're cheap, but I mean, instead of paying $15,000, $16,000 to go for a semester, maybe now you can pay $6,500 or $7,000. Number three, they did allow here, the good thing is that they don't have to worry about it, is that they did allow financially to go with students to go study abroad to certain programs, exchange programs. So that's the same that we had at Xavier. When I was there, they didn't allow that. We were able to change that. Number four, one of the things that we're doing here now is we are becoming a passport acceptance facility. We're in the process of that right now. Hopefully within the next month or two, we will be. So any student would be able to come on campus. They don't have to drive anywhere, apply for their passport. They can get passport pictures. We will have notary services as well available at no cost. So if you need to get something notarized for whatever reason, just come to our office, we'll do it. So we're trying to become a one-stop shop for students, faculty, and staff on campus. And not charge anything else. I don't believe in oh, we're offering a service, so let's charge a student more. No, I mean, whatever we can do at no cost, we will definitely do. So yeah, and then community service. Service learning project programs as well. There are some that are in discussions right now with some faculty, so that may be coming along. But my philosophy, and I've said it very clearly to all my staff, is like we service anybody. If anybody wants to go to Russia, we will help them go to Russia. If they want to go to whatever they want to go, we will help them with that. Of course, there are limitations with countries like North Korea, Iran, and some other ones that we may not want to send you. But other than that, we will help you. Whether we have an agreement or not, the student should still be able to go. And we will not force them to go somewhere where we want them to go. It's where they want to go, as long as they can take the classes that they need, right? So.
And I wanted to ask you, as a leader for the Center for Global Education and Engagement, how will you foster an environment where your staff can help faculty members across the campus create study abroad programs? How will you get your own staff members and your own team involved in that process?
Oh, absolutely. They're heavily involved, to be honest with you. So what we did is, when I came here, I took a look at, I quickly got a call from various faculty saying, I'm interested in taking a group of students abroad. I just don't know what to do, or the instructions are not very clear, whatever the reason was. So one of the things that I've done in my other institutions, including Xavier University and basically in all of them, is to develop policies and procedures for faculty interested in going and taking a group of students abroad. What do they need to do step by step? So I brought those over here, and we had about a page and a half of instructions for faculty. Now it's about 7 or 8 pages. Mm-hmm. And some of them were like, oh my God, that's a lot. I said, but read it. And it just tells them everything. Like, oh, you're not allowed to purchase alcohol. You're not allowed to do this. Some things that otherwise they would have to go themselves to the website in the accounting office or whatever, try to find it. We all consolidated in one place. You read this document, you're good to go.
Right.
It tells you what you need to do. So we finished that and actually got approved now in December. And I just presented, was it yesterday or it was Wednesday? I presented it Wednesday to the deans as well. So now in the next couple of weeks, we will be sending an email to all faculty saying, hey, if you're interested in go study abroad, here's the document that you need to know. It's on our website. If you're interested in applying, let us know and make an appointment with us. And every faculty will have to meet with us. If they want to take students, we help them with the promotion of the program. We help them with making sure that we pay the bills, to the airline and the hotels and whatever, So we will help them with that. And that's something that was lacking before. Not because they didn't want to do it. It's just that they just didn't have enough staff on, with a part-time employee, it was not possible. So, but now we can. So we have a process for that. It's very easy. We ran it by a lot of faculty and a lot of administrators. They made a lot of their changes that they wanted to see in there, and everybody hopefully is happy with that now. So it's pretty easy now to do.
And I wanted to ask you, throughout your life, you traveled to countries like Spain, France, England, Ireland, China, and many others. Despite the current pandemic, what is your favorite country to visit and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh my God, they're so different. I love every country that I've visited. I can't say that I never been to a country that I'm like, I really don't want to come back, Mm-hmm. So I've traveled a lot to Spain, Hong Kong, and China and Malaysia because of the nature of my job. St. Lucia University had a campus in Spain, so I spent a lot of time there. Same with Hong Kong and Malaysia and Singapore for a little bit. I spent a lot of time in Vietnam. So I do enjoy Hong Kong a lot, actually, because it's a mixture of British and Chinese, and it's just kind of cool. I don't know why. I like that a lot. I would say I don't have a preferred one, but I have a lot of preferred. Yes, I would say. I don't know. That's a good question.
And throughout my research process, I've also learned that you've had the experience of going scuba diving in some places. What has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, actually, I've done it only in US, as a matter of fact. But I like it a lot. I mean, I came from Puerto Rico, so obviously the ocean is a big part. Water is a big part of who I am. So I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it. Unfortunately, I mean, my wife at that time, she didn't like scuba and didn't like the water and was afraid of it. So I haven't done it in a while, but it's something that I really like. So.
And during the 2012 interview with Upper Iowa University News, you told the publication that you were planning on acquiring your doctorate in higher education administration around December 2012. Did you ever acquire your doctorate in higher education administration?
I did not actually. I'm ABD, meaning that I finished all the classes, I took all the exams, and the only thing I'm missing is my dissertation, which it's a huge paper. But right now, I am applying to begin my doctorate again, and some people say, well, why don't you just go finish your paper? And I said, well, I mean, there's something that I didn't like about, it was at St. Lucia University, that I just didn't like about St. Lucia University after I finished that. I mean, I had a change of 5 advisors through my PhD, all of them. When you do a dissertation, you have to run your topic by your advisor. And one advisor said, yep, go ahead and move with that topic. I started working on my dissertation. The second advisor came, nope. I said, I mean, what?
Yeah.
It's not a 10-page paper. We're talking about a 250-page. I said, no. So that happened constantly. And I said, they're just not, I'm not going to continue doing that, even though it's my alma mater twice. I said, I'm not going to do it in a place that I just don't feel comfortable anymore. So then they wanted me to retake some classes. And I said, why? So I found, I said, let me just backtrack a little bit more and see what I want to do. And then I found a program at Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, that I'm applying right now. I should be submitting an application the next day or two, as a matter of fact. And then if I get accepted, I would start in May. And it's a 3-year program, and you finish with your doctorate. So I do have most of the classes, but they're asking me to retake the classes again. So yeah, so.
That's great.
Yeah, so hopefully.
And I wanted to ask you, while I was doing research, I found that the name Ishmael actually means God will hear in Hebrew origin. And I wanted to ask you, if you could go back in time and talk to the young Ishmael Betancourt, what would you want him to hear and what would you want him to do differently?
Oh my God. What would I want him to do differently? That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question. If I went back in time, I would probably tell myself, don't worry too much, I always worry about a lot of stuff. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? Do I get a job or whatever? And what about, it's for study abroad? I mean, is the student going to be, not to worry about. Things are going to happen and you can control them, and it is what it is, and you figure it out. So relax more. I'm very stressed a lot, but that's just probably self-inflicted. So I said, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. Because I mean, once you start worrying for everything, it can hinder you in terms of looking for opportunities. It makes you, you can see outside of the box, and that could be problematic. So if you're not afraid and you're like, hey, it will be okay, and it makes you feel that you can actually take more risks and take advantage of more opportunities. So that's what I would say.
And I actually wanted to ask you, since you are a native of San Juan, Puerto Rico, or from San Juan, Puerto Rico, what would you say your favorite types of Puerto Rican cuisine are? And how would you describe yourself as a chef from 1 to 10?
Based on my friends, actually, they like when I cook a lot. I do a lot of seasoning, Caribbean seasoning, a lot of Caribbean cuisine, and they like it a lot. I mean, two of them have said, you should open a restaurant. One little fact is that my grandpa used to own a restaurant.
Mhm.
So my mom and my grandma, they are very, very good cooks, actually. So, so yeah, so maybe I just have that in my in my blood. But in terms of food, we eat a lot of rice and beans, and we eat a lot of pork, seasoned pork, and that's one thing I miss. But believe it or not, there are a lot of people in Roanoke that actually cook Puerto Rican cuisine and Caribbean cuisine. They just do
Mhm.
catering. I mean, I'm telling you, at least like 10 or 15. And I was like, oh my God, I was surprised that I can get it here. So, and I have already done it for Christmas. I went over and got some food, and there's a lot of Latin markets, you know, Mexican food and Caribbean food and everything. They're pretty similar. There's some differences, but for the most part, you can get whatever you want to, you know. So I miss it, but I'm able to get it here, and I'm appreciative of that. I'm grateful. So
And I wanted to ask you, what was the best advice you've ever received throughout your career, and who gave you that advice?
I always remember advice. Well, my mom had her own business, and she always said, you got to take care of your staff. You don't take care of your staff and your people, they'll never be loyal to you. You'll never achieve anything. And I've implemented that since day one, becoming a manager and supervising individuals, that I take care of them. I take care of them. You know, I mean, you can ask my staff, and if they say I have to come in 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, whatever, fine, no problem. You don't have to put for vacation. I mean, it's okay. I shouldn't say this in action tape, but but you know, but yeah, I mean, you're flexible with your staff, and they will be grateful for that, and pay you back with their, you know, with their efforts, and that's what I want. I mean, I want people to be happy and I feel appreciated and that they're part of the team. So I did have a professor in college that said, you know, a lot of people always said, oh, you know, I don't want to work with connections. I want to do it for myself. You know, I want to be somebody by myself. BS, man. If you have the connections, do it.
Right.
And that always stuck with me. They're like, don't worry about it. Use the connections. They're not going to do your job for you. You still have to prove yourself. So, I mean, if you can get in the door with somebody else helping you out, do it. And I'm like, actually, that's true. That's true. You know, I'll get fired if I don't do a good job anyway. So, you know, so don't tell yourself like, I'm not going to do that because I want to do it by myself. And I'm like, okay. so that worked out pretty good. So.
And I wanted to ask you, you've also had experience. I know you've acquired a degree when it pertains to international business.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you, how does your experience with international business correlate to your job now? And how does it go hand in hand with your day-to-day operation?
Absolutely, 100%. So I never thought I was going to be working for a university. I'm like, okay, cool. So I got my bachelor's degree in international business and international studies and a minor in communications, right? And at that moment, back in 1998, international business was not very big. In fact, the international studies major only had 3 majors, and I was one of them. My roommate was another one. Another friend of ours, Puerto Rican, was the third person. So,
Mhm.
okay. And then after that, I got my executive master's in international business, EMIB. So that's what you will see probably in my resume and all that. So everything I've done is in international business, and my intentions were to go work for IBM or Microsoft or whatever, or work for an embassy, work abroad. And one of my friends said, hey, you know, I know you, I helped the admissions office at my alma mater at St. Louis University to recruit students in Puerto Rico. Every time I went back for break or whatever, I would take brochures to the high schools and talk to them in Spanish and all that. And then when they called me when I graduated, I said, hey, you know, we have a position that it's open. Would you like to come and recruit for us? And I said, you know, I'm 21, 23 years old. And I'm like, yeah, let's try it. If I don't like it, I'll go somewhere else. And so I ended up coming in, and I liked it. I got my executive master's in international business, and I was intending to leave. And then my boss at that moment said, hey, you know, we have an opening in international office. Would you be interested in that? And I said, you know, why not? Let's take it a shot. And I've been there ever since in the international education. That was in 2003, I believe it was. So, um, and it's very similar. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, international education is all about relationships. You're trying to get, this sounds pretty transactional, but I mean, you're trying to get students to come to Radford University. So it's in a way you want to call it sales, it might be sales, but you're talking to high schools and say, hey, send me some students, when did they come over here? And you're trying to promote Radford University as the best option for those students. So kind of like selling your product, right? So it goes hand in hand. You have to understand you have to understand the time difference. So I constantly have meetings at 11 p.m. because that's how it is, or 1 o'clock in the morning, get a training, or 11 or 10 p.m., because that's how it works for them. So it's 12-hour differences in Asia. So I'm used to all that stuff. Also, foreign exchange rates. You have to understand the culture. That's the most important. If you go there and recruit and you say, no, here's how it goes, you're coming to America and this is how you have to, you're not going to be successful. So
Right.
you have to understand, and you have to meet them halfway, if you will. So their importance is in rankings also. So I know that when I go and recruit in Asia, I have to bring a lot of literature on rankings. They want to know the cost. They want to know this. Versus when I go to Europe, they may not necessarily care about rankings. They're looking more for cost. So you get to know the markets a little bit. Just kind of like when you graduate, you're going to go be a salesperson for a pharmaceutical company or whatever. You know where to go. You learn it. It comes to the territory, and then you get used to it. But I mean, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. If you work, I decided to stay in higher ed because if you work for a company like Microsoft, you don't have days off in Christmas. You don't have days off in any other way. So, I mean, for the university here, they close 2 weeks for Christmas. They close, they have, full break, and they have the other things. So I'm like, that's great. So, have days off. And so, but that doesn't happen in private industry. So yeah, but I like it a lot. I mean, it's applying education and to international business. So it's a great place. It's a great thing. I mean, travel a lot. You get to learn also. I've traveled to so many places. University pays for it, of course, but as part of my job. But you still get to know a little bit. I mean, of the different countries and cultures, and they take you out and you eat some stuff that you never thought you were gonna eat. So, part of it. So.
And if you weren't working with international students or students in general, where would you see yourself? What would you see yourself doing as a career field? And would you ever get into politics or do something with public service?
Actually, I've always wanted to work at an embassy. The U.S. embassy in Spain, U.S. embassy in China, whatever it is that we have. We have, God knows, I mean, about 200 embassies throughout the world, or whatever, 175 embassies, and plus consulate, which are satellite offices from those. So, I mean, we're talking about 300-400 of them. I would have loved to actually work with that, because it's actually working with foreign cultures and representing the United States to other cultures as well. So, so it's kind of like public service. It's with the government, and that I think that would have been my number one. Now I have a child, so I mean, going and living to another country and move every 3 years, because they're required to move every 3 years. I think 3 or 4 years would be a little bit more difficult, but yeah, I mean, I always wanted to do that. So.
And if you had to say in 5 years, where would you see the Center for Global Education going in that time span? And how would you hope to expand? We kind of already talked about this, but how would you hope, or where do you see the expansion process going in, let's say, 5 years' time of the center?
Yep, I think that in the next 5 years, we're hoping to reach, I think the goal of the university is to have about 250 international students on campus. I'm hoping that we can reach that in the next 5 years, if not maybe a little bit more. We also hope to have about 200 students to go study abroad as well. Right now, we have maybe about 100 and so. So I think they're definitely, the goals of the university have placed are definitely reasonable for an individual to come here and get those achieved. One of the things that I came here is I knew that my first year was going to be building and seeing what do we have here that works, what doesn't it work? Is this what students want? I mean, why are we offering something that students don't want?
Right.
And eliminate those and get the ones that student want, and so on. So the pandemic, as bad as it has been, it's allowed me to actually go back and take a look at all that stuff and say, okay, we don't need this, we don't, and get approved a lot of stuff that otherwise would have taken years to get approved. So, so it's been very positive for us. We are ready to hit the ground running. As soon as the pandemic is out, we'll be able to go out and start recruiting from the get-go and have brochures ready, website ready. I mean, everything ready, and not have to worry about that stuff. So, but yeah, I think definitely growth. There's no question about growth. Yeah.
Well, Ishmael, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and the Tartan. We really appreciate it, and thank you so much.
No problem. Anytime. Anytime. Thank
Have
you
a
so
great
much.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.